to leave it off for now, Tony, and then put it on when we read.
right, mic check from the chambers. Okay, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. All right. Countdown, 1, 2, 3, 4. Yeah, I am. You want to come up here? Does he have it? You got it, does he have it, Jonathan? Okay. Is it this one? Okay. Put it closer. How you doing? I'm doing well. My phone. He's coming in.
Maybe I don't know. Make sure. Yeah, I'm trying to see what frequencies we're on. 24, 518.
Still trying to check it.
We should be good.
Check it.
Same frequency.
Check 1. You're good. Okay.
What about now? Is it any better?
Good afternoon. We're going to wait just a minute until the camera gets focused. I've been told I need to wait about 60 seconds. Good afternoon. I am Chief Philip Broadfoot with the Danville Police Department, and I appreciate you all coming here on short notice. We gave notice for this meeting out earlier this morning. but felt that it was critical that we act and let everyone know. Also want to thank members of council for being here. I certainly didn't ask them to come, but I certainly appreciate your support and your presence here today. Mayor Saunders and Vice Mayor Miller and council members Campbell, Buckner, Jones, Shanks, and Vogler. Thank you very much for coming. What I want to do is I'm going to be reading from a prepared statement, and then we'll certainly answer questions afterwards if you have any. There is a news release that has my comments on it that has been passed out, and you can follow from there. The city of Danville has experienced an unusual number of firearm-related incidents resulting in injury or death in the last month. On April 11th on North Union Street, we had a murder that was the result of a personal confrontation between two men who knew each other. We have made an arrest in that, and that was the second murder of the year in Danville. On April 25th, there was a shooting on College Park Drive. In that particular incident, there were two men, two neighbors. They got into an argument over a broken beer bottle, and one neighbor shot the other one, and the victim refused to assist in the prosecution. On April 26, an uninvolved and innocent Register and B employee on his way to work drove through the intersection on Berryman Avenue and was injured by broken glass that was caused by several bullets that were fired at his vehicle. Apparently, those bullets were fired by mistake at him, that we have no information that they were directed toward him because of who he was, but they were apparently fired by mistake as a result of some earlier violent clashes between some gang members in the neighborhood, and a seizure of an assault weapon by the police 3 hours earlier from that very intersection. On April 28th, a man reported that he was shot in the foot during a robbery while he was walking at about 12:20 in the morning in the North Main Street area. On May 1st, a woman did not report it to us, but she showed up at the emergency room with a bullet wound. And when we interviewed her, she said that she had received the bullet wound at a bar in North Carolina, but our subsequent investigation determined that it was more than likely that she received the bullet wound during a incident, an argument that had happened on Barrett Street at about 5:30 in the morning. On May 3rd, two men were shot and killed in a home in the 300 block of Hughes Street. Those were the third and fourth murders of the year in Danville. And then on May 5th, last night, there was an attempted robbery and shooting of a taxi driver on Myrtle Avenue. All of these combined have created a sense of urgency and a sense of fear here in the community, and we needed to address that. We do not believe that these incidents are related at all. What we do believe is that in at least 4 of the 7 incidents, the victim and the assailant knew each other. And we think that's important because if it's a stranger crime where someone attacks someone who is completely unknown to them, that certainly creates a greater level of fear in the community than when two neighbors have an argument and one pulls a gun and injures the other. There's still significant events. There's still shootings and uses of firearms that we need to deal with, but the context of them does, I think, present the backstory to these things and helps people understand what is going on. Regardless of the facts of all of those incidents, the bottom line is that the citizens of Danville need to feel safe as they travel the streets and walk the sidewalks in their neighborhoods. To reestablish that confidence, today the Danville Police Department announces the full-scale reactivation of the focused effort of the Danville Street Crimes Unit. The Street Crimes Unit was initially formed in 2010 to attack similar violence problems in the city, and it was extremely successful. The unit's operations were scaled back on purpose by me in the summer of 2014 as a result of the national conversations that were taking place about police and community relations after the incident that occurred in Ferguson, Missouri. The unit has operated at a reduced level since that time. Unfortunately, the recent firearms-related incidents demand that we return the unit to its original strength and purpose. To that end, I have ordered my staff to make the necessary personnel adjustments and equipment assignments to accomplish that task. This does not mean we have abandoned or will neglect the community policing efforts we have always employed or are planning to begin. A safe community requires both a strong enforcement and a strong community policing effort to suppress crime. We are committed to making both of those efforts work. We're working closely with the Virginia Attorney General's office to implement various programs and trainings, and we'll be holding community meetings in the next several weeks to explain our efforts and to solicit input on how to reduce the violence. We're confident that we can positively impact the rate of violence before the long days of summer arrive. And I'll open it up now to any questions that anyone has.
Is there a certain area where the street crime unit will be designated?
The street crimes unit will be assigned to the entire city and will be responsible for dealing with the violent crimes as they occur or where we believe they will occur. But that does mean that they are going to be probably spending a lot of their time in two areas of the city, which are the area north of the river, bounded by North Main and Arnett and 3rd Street, and then the area south of the river from in the Kemper Avenue area and those two areas. We do have a high incidence of violent crime in those areas.
Chief, does this mean that there will be, offices in those areas? Will there be officers, living in those areas?
There will be officers in the area, did you say?
Officers, like, in an office? Like, will there be a police department, like, location in those areas?
No, there's no plan to establish a permanent footprint in a building. No, this requires something much more immediate and much more effective to deal with that. But I think what it's going to be is assigning officers to patrol and to work in those areas and deal with the community members and also deal with the violence problems that are occurring there. Mr. Campbell.
Yes, Chief, thank you for your vigilance in trying to better the quality of life of our citizens here in Danville. We've had two major initiatives, the Safe and Sound Coalition and Danville United. The Safe and Sound Coalition is very much what you're talking about doing now, and bringing back up the crime unit, police
Yes.
street crime unit. I feel in which there was retaliation in the community. We had more arrests. The community was a lot safer. I think that in certain areas of the community, the people, the citizens didn't fully understand what was going on. I am asking that we will have town hall meetings, that out of a bad situation, some good things can happen. And hopefully that the citizens can, in the area where we have these problems, we can engage with the police department, the partnership that we've been asking for, that it can move forward. I have talked to some pastors and Reverend Lovelace, Dr. Monique, the bishop of this church, and I know that Hughes Street area is one area that we need to tackle right away. But in the process of doing it, I know that you're going to do some things immediately. If we can schedule sometime maybe next week, and we can have a town hall meeting, let the concerned citizens come together, and some of our citizens are scared
Yes.
and they're fearful, so we can enhance better quality of life in our community.
Councilman Campbell and I have talked about this, and it's something we are both fully on board with, that this is a two-pronged effort. This is not only having the street crimes unit focus on the people who are committing the crimes, but to have the rest of the police department focus on the community and making sure that they understand and support this whole effort. And to that effort, we are going to have the town hall meetings that Councilman Campbell recommended, and hopefully that they will be successful in opening up to the community and showing to the community exactly what we're doing. Vice Mayor Miller.
Please, you're interested in him, I was opposed to letting him go in the first place. But, will there be modification in light of what's gone on in the country in the last 2 years? Will you approach me a little different, maybe less overbearing, or, how will you go at it now? Because there were complaints that, street kind of unit was too overbearing, and that's what happened. How are you gonna change it this time to make it work better?
When we first started the street crimes unit back in 2010, we also had purchased several of the body cameras. And it was in the early stages of the use of those cameras. We had to learn how to make them work and incorporate them into our enforcement efforts. We've done very well with that over the last 6 years. And we have a number of those cameras throughout the department. And and we've learned also a whole lot of things about the interaction when we're doing that very focused enforcement effort. The officers have learned from their mistakes. They've heard from the community, and we have too, and we're going to try to temper that effort. There is no way to nicely tell someone they're under arrest when they don't want to be arrested and resist that effort. That does take some force, and I hope everyone understands that. But our goal is to de-escalate, and we've been through a lot of training since then. And in fact, just about the entire department has gone through a 40-hour course in those de-escalation techniques. So we're hoping that all of that combined with the cameras and the focus will ensure that we end up with a good police response. We're not going to please everybody. There are going to be some complaints, but we hope that that will be documented on video, and then we'll be able to deal with it from there. Councilman Jones.
One of the things the council talked about last night at the council meeting, and you're gonna be hearing a lot of this, is conflict resolution in our community. I know the answer to this question is what more can the community do to help you? Is stop the violence. But can you share with the community what more the community can do to help us? Because it's not just the police's fault problem, it's just not city council's problem. We hear this all the time. City government needs to do more. Is there anything that you can share today with the community for those persons who abide by the law, those things that they can do to help the police department, to help city council, to help our school system? Could you share things that the community as a whole can do together to help this problem we have?
I've said it before, I'll say it again, and I keep repeating myself. Law enforcement cannot solve crimes without information. When a crime occurs, if something happened out here in the hall and I went out there, I wouldn't have any idea who did it until somebody starts giving me information, and I can then follow up on that information. That's the key to making a community safe. You have to have information, the willingness of citizens to pass that information on. And it doesn't matter how we do it. They can knock on come to the police department and give their name and their number and say, this is what I know. They can call us anonymously on the Crime Stoppers number. They can talk to a police officer off to the side. We have that happen all the time. It doesn't mean that that does not happen. That's how we solve our crime. That's why we have such a good clearance rate on a lot of our homicides, is because people do give us information. So the key to this whole process is to pass that information along, and when everyone buys into that and acknowledges that, we can have a very safe community. Yes?
Along those lines, you mentioned that while we're not going to have physical precincts in these areas, I think you did say we're going to have the same officers kind of in the same areas on a regular basis, which is a major tenet of community-oriented policing, building that level of trust and the relationship between the residents and the police officers. Can you elaborate more on how that is going to be beneficial
certainly. Everyone knows that the key to good relationships is having a relationship with someone else. You go out here with a stranger on the street, you're a little guarded, you don't know who they are, you don't know what their game is, and you don't know how they respond to you. So your guard is up. But as we all know, and as the literature shows, and as the studies show, is that what works is that personal communication between people. You start breaking down the barriers, and that's how you end up making that connection with someone else. You do it with family, you do it with friends, you do it with neighbors, and we want to do that with the community. And you can do that even in an enforcement action. You can take an enforcement action. You can, and we try to teach officers to, once you are in a situation in an enforcement action, is to try to leave it as good and hopefully better than where it started. And you try to disengage from there. It's not a process of just walking away. There's some things that you can say to keep that going. So we're working with our officers to try to make that happen, because that's the key to all of this, is that interaction with the community and building that trust. You're absolutely right.
I agree that there is things that need to be done to combat crime, but with this street crime unit, it didn't work as well, because a lot of innocent people were charged and with misdemeanors and taken downtown. What we have to do is establish a relationship with the black community, with the Danville police officers, and in doing that, communication. We have got to have communication in the city. The police officers, some of us in our community, we are willing to talk with you, but it's the attitudes, not just the attitude in the black communities, it's the attitude of the police officers as well. Because I stand here today, I was an innocent person that a police officer just hollered at me and charged me with being a police officer, and I had to go to court and with a lawyer, and the charges was dropped. And at the same time, I tried to talk with this police officer. I never raised my voice, you see. So I'm having a tough time listening to you with the street crime unit. So my question to you, how much training have they had? Because we are willing to talk with them, but it goes both ways. The people that are criminals, I expect you to take them downtown. I want them to go downtown. But people like me that are 90% of us in the black community that are good, we need a relationship with you, but I need to know, do all your officers trained to come and not look at all of us as being criminals, and to talk with us, and to communicate with us. See, it's got to go both ways.
I couldn't agree more with you, is that it is a two-way street, and one of the best ways to make that a two-way street is for that information to flow. Once that information starts to flow, then those relationships start to build. But you're absolutely right. The officer who comes out and encounters a person on the street does not know their background, does not know whether they're a violent criminal or not, and he's got to make some decisions based on that. I will say that the police officers, they have a set of rules, and you ask about the training. I mean, they go through 6 months of initial training when they become a police officer. They're required to go through 40 hours every 2 years after that, and we include far more hours of training every year for the officers to make sure that they do their jobs correctly. And they try very hard to do that. Before they make a charge, they have a basis for that charge, and it's based on probable cause. And not every charge results in a conviction in court, but there's a basis for every charge that they do make. But that is the problem with in encountering citizens who they observe or see committing a crime, whether it's running a stop sign or something like that. It's the question of, is this a gang member who was just involved in a violent crime last week, or is this a good citizen from the community who's trying to do right and happened to run through the stop sign? That's the problem for the officer, and that's where the relationships can help that process. Any other questions? Yes.
You mentioned in the beginning a little bit about gang activity. Can you just describe what that is like in Danville right now?
We do have gangs, and we do have gang activity. The gangs that we have are they're fluid. They come and they go. The members come and go. There are some that are fairly stable, but we're actively working on them. We do have a gang unit, and we're constantly trying to stay on top of that and keep track of them. And there a lot of our problems with burglaries and crime do originate from some of these gangs in town.
So at least one of the recent incidents was stemmed from gang activity.
There's gang activity involved in one of them, yes. Yes.
Will there be a zero tolerance type of protocol involved with this version of the street crimes unit, or will it be more officer discretion involved?
No, it's not going to be a zero tolerance. Zero tolerance breaks down the community relations, just like this woman was saying. We have to be a little smarter and more understanding. The problem is the officer has to know that when the encounter is made. Is this one where I do need to be more understanding or not? Our goal in this whole process is to stop the violence, not to stop the minor offenses from occurring.
Will supervisors be involved in the active process of the street crimes unit on the scene to make sure everything is running properly?
Not on every single incident. It's impossible to have a supervisor present on every one, but we have a very low span of control within the department for supervisors, and I think that with that, coupled with the video from the body cameras, allows us to properly supervise all of the interactions that the officers will be making. Yes, Jessica.
Council here, have you thought about the additional costs or what additional costs this will mean to the city? Can you elaborate on that?
There is no additional cost. We are using the resources we have now. We're using the vehicles we have, the equipment we have, the officers we have. It's just a matter of refocusing what we're doing.
Chief Bartlett, can you tell us how many officers the street crimes unit consists of?
It can, it varies on sickness and a whole lot of things, but hopefully we can be able to assign between 15 and 20 officers at various times.
Chief, kind of looking on the other side of things, I spoke with leaders that work with people in the communities where we're seeing more violence, and they brought up poverty. When you see poverty, you see more violence. Have you taken that into consideration when you put these officers, into these communities? If they're ticketing more, certain people may not have the money for that, and that may, drive more violence if they don't have enough money.
No, it's certainly a problem, and I agree 100% with the folks you're talking with. Crime is associated with a poor education and poverty, and City Council is working very hard to correct those two things. But in the meantime, we've got to deal with the crime, and not arresting someone because they live in poverty and continuing and letting them continue to do violent acts is not what we want to do either. So there is a price to pay for committing crime.
I guess I was referring to street tickets or, parking tickets or parking violations or vehicle violations and things like that.
Well, part of the fabric of a community is is order maintenance in there. So when you have folks that are firing a gunshot at 3 o'clock in the morning, that's a misdemeanor. But it disturbs the community. And I believe that deserves a police response, and I believe that deserves that person, if we can identify them, they need to face justice for doing that. So there are minor crimes that disturb the community, and those are the ones that we want to deal with. Any other questions?
Can you give us any kind of update on the homicide on Wednesday night, where you guys are in terms of the suspect, and you feel confident you know who's behind it, and you guys are closing in on that person, or is it still under investigation?
That's still under investigation.
I was asking about the finances, and if you continue to see these types of activities in the city, would you see in the future a need for additional officers to combat this type of violence in the city?
I didn't understand the question. What?
Well, I asked if there was going to be an increase in the need for finances to support this program, and you said that there wouldn't be. We're going to use the current officers. But if we continue to see an escalation in violence, do you think that there's going to be a need for additional officers on the streets?
I don't envision that the violence will increase to any great degree. If it does, we're going to have to reevaluate, but I think that we're going to be able to deal with that. Yes.
One of the things we're seeing is that the issue's a little different involving newspaper carriers, taxi drivers, usually it's a fuss going on the street, but that's the difference we're seeing is that it seems to be people who's doing the job.
You're absolutely right. It's a difference. Things have changed, and it periodically does that. Innocent people do get involved in these violent crimes. But like I said, just in the last month, we've had 7 of them, and 4 of them were people who knew each other. And so, and 3 of them were not. But those are the ones that upset the public the most, because they think, I could be that person. I could be that innocent person walking down the street, and it's very scary, which is why we're doing what we're doing. Most of our focus, of course, is going to be on trying to focus on the ones who are doing those crimes. But we can't sit here and totally eliminate that possibility, but we're going to try our best to make that happen.
Which is the next question. A few people have reported that their homes have been regularly shot at, cars in certain neighborhoods that we wouldn't even expect crime would occur. A lot of those residents are feeling fearful of retaliation, of the same people coming back to their homes and maybe doing something else. What can we do to ensure, what are you all doing to ensure the safety of those individuals who really feel a fear in their way?
Our investigation of almost all of those incidents shows that there is a reason why the person who fired into the home fired into that home. And it all comes down to information. If the people who are experiencing that will be open with that information, we can solve a lot of these crimes.
But what do you do to make them feel safe that there won't be a retaliation if they share information?
That is tough, because we do have people in this community that do threaten others, and that fear of giving information does create a problem. But we do have a Crime Stoppers line. We can, and we will willingly talk to anyone at any time if they are willing to talk with us and share information about crime in confidence. Yes, ma'am.
Right now, where does Danville stand when it comes to crime statistics in comparison with other cities in our state?
The latest statistics were for 2014, and I think we were second in the state in cities. Counties are historically below cities simply because of the concentration of the population. But I don't know where we will stand in the 2015. They should be out shortly, like by the end of May. The statistics should be out. I hope we do better. But one of the things that I do want to point out is that we were just recently, last week, recognized by the White House. Major Wiles and I both were invited up to the White House. We went there and were recognized at the President's Open Data Initiative, which was recognizing 53 agencies across the nation who have taken the pledge and are following through on sharing their data openly, which is one of the community policing efforts that the President's 21st Century Policing Initiative focused on, which was one of the ways to win that trust of the community is to share your data openly. And we try to do that, and we gather our data, and we are proud that we share that data and that we do not cut corners on our data. And what we put out there is what is reported. And sometimes it hurts, but it helps make decisions, and it helps council to make decisions. It helps me to make decisions. And so one of the results of reporting all of our crime is that we end up being second in the state and the cities for that crime. But I would rather have that than not report certain crimes and then make bad decisions on where resources go. Yes, Councilman Pope.
Things that people have asked council about and give you an opportunity to shed some light on. In regards to the street crime unit, is the level of experience or the types of officers that we utilize in the street crimes unit? In other words, will these be officers right out of the academy, or are these going to be our more experienced officers, or mix of both, without getting too specific?
No, we're not going to put brand new officers out there. It takes several years minimum for an officer to fully learn this job and be able to do it effectively. So we do put our more experienced officers out there that have had a range of activity, a range of investigations, and know how to deal with people, and are productive officers. So yeah, we're going to put our best out there.
And Chief, how soon will this become effective?
We're going to start this weekend. Yes, Ms. Baines. Oh.
We can make sure that the crimes unit will not be overzealous in the stopping of younger African Americans, or do they need to be concerned that because a lot of the activity is surrounded or done by that community, that they can expect more traffic stops or to be watched a little more carefully?
The street crime, the street crimes unit is going to work in the entire city. They are going to end up being focused in the areas where the violent crime occurs. The area where the violent crime occurs are in the most poverty-stricken areas of the city. The most poverty-stricken areas of the city also happen to be where there is a black majority. And unfortunately, that ends up in more interactions with the black citizens of Danville. But that's where the crime is occurring, and I don't know of any other way. I cannot put a street crimes officer out on Route 58 east or west where no violent crime is occurring. I've got to put them where the crime occurs, and then try to deal with it as best and as professionally as we can. Any other questions?
On your racial diversity training that you had since 2014, you scaled back because of Ferguson?
Yes, we did.
Can you elaborate on the racial diversity training that your officers have had?
Since that time? Yeah, just about every officer has gone through 40 hours of intensive training on it. It's really focused on how to deal with the mentally ill, but all of those skills of de-escalation and talking and dealing with people apply to all of the interactions that we become involved in. And we're looking forward to those officers putting that training to use. And in fact, we've got another one started Monday, another 40-hour training starting Monday for a group of our officers. We haven't done the entire department, but we've got the majority of the ones that are out on patrol. And as far as I know, I think just about all of the street crimes officers have been through it. Any other questions? Yes.
Do you feel the pressure? I mean, because obviously if you don't get this under control, it's going to hurt economic development. It's going to, we already examined the flag issue and all that going on. Don't you feel like you got to feel the pressure?
Not as much pressure as the citizens are feeling who are being shot at. And so we have to respond to them. Any other questions? Thank you very much.